All right, so in this one, we want to get the user answer that might be associated to this specific question for the requested user. So if we scroll down here, we're going to get this right here. It's going to be very similar to this question, but we don't want to do get object or 404. Instead, we'll say user answer, and I'll say exists equals to, and this is going to be user answer dot objects dot get, and it's going to be the question being related to the question and the user being the requested user. So user equals to request.user, and then question is equal to the instance, because we have this instance right here. So this, in some cases, will absolutely work. In other cases, it won't. So we'll show you an example of that in just a second. So we have this user answer exists, and we'll put this in here, just like that. Instead of calling it user answer, I'll just say user answer. Instead of calling it user answer exists, we'll just call it user answer, because we have this new user answer, which is fine. That works. So if the user answer exists, then we've got this. But since this is the case, I also want to move this up above the form stuff, because we will do some stuff with this user answer at some point if it exists. So let's go ahead and try this out or see what happens if we use this inside of single. So inside of single here, we would just say whether or not this user answer is existing. So I'll just go ahead and put user answer and dot user right at the very top so we can see it. And let's go ahead and make sure that we're running the server. And if I run it, it does show the user itself, so that user answer actually does exist. So what that means here is we want to keep the user answer selected depending on what it is. So if we want to put an if statement here, if user answer dot my answer dot ID is equal to answer ans dot ID, then we want it to be checked, or we want it to be selected. Right, so this right here is actually doing a call for whether or not this is the one that we've been working with. Right, so it's checking if this user answer is there, then we are going to use it. So user answer, my answer, in the models, my answer, which is an answer, answer ID, we get that. So then we would say checked, just by going checked equals to checked. All right, so we'll do this exact same call down in your coworker's ideal answer, and then we'll say their answer. So let's go ahead and go back into our project and refresh in here. So this is currently holds no importance. So what I'm going to do is, by default, I'll just say checked equals to checked for that one specifically, and that way it's checked. Cool. So now that we've got this, it's starting to come together kind of. We can see this, but if we go to 1, or possibly 2, said this as well. So it returned 2, and that's what's happening in our view, in our get call. So this right here, it's actually returning 2 different answers for this exact same thing. And that problem is happening because of this specifically. So what I want to do instead is say user answer. I'm going to do try to get this user answer. And then if that user answer does not exist, so we'll do except user answer does not exist, then we will set a brand new user answer. And we're going to go with user answer. So this is a new instance of that. And then we'll say except user answer dot multiple objects returned. So this is another exception. In this case, it's a multiple object returned. Instead of 1, get would normally return 1. If that's the case, then we would come in here and just say filter this. And I'm just going to go with the first instance that exists. And then except if there's some other, if these don't work or anything like that, then we will just do this last one of user answer and create a new instance as well. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and come down here and change these new user answers to just user answer. So now we're working either with the pre-existing user answer or we're creating a new one. And that's what this try block is doing for us. And it makes this code a little bit more manageable for us to use going forward. And it also checks to make sure that we're not saving too many user answers when we only need to save one, right? So it really only needs one. So now that I've got this, I can go in here and now I can see that if I save these different answers, it will actually take me to that. So if I go back in here, I see, oh, I've got this issue of holds no importance. So that's what's happening with this single value here. So this is this checked in general. So we could do a call that's going to loop through based on whether or not their answer is ID is actually in there or something like that. Or instead, we could just say if their user answer, so if user answer dot their answer, so if not to that, so meaning they don't have an answer, then we'll say checked equals to checked. And if. So now I refresh in here. If I go ahead and change it to holds no importance, hit save and continue. There's an error with the answer you provided for them. So this is that value one. So let's go back into our forms. And it's saying, oh, it's going to try and get this. So in this case, it's going to give us this. If their answer ID is equal to -1, return their answer ID, and else we'll raise that form validation error. So we'll try that one more time, and we'll say holds no importance, save and continue. That time it actually did save it, but the actual ID, or the answer was already associated to it, so it didn't remove it. So in our models, for our views, we want to go back in here and change their answer ID down here to being none. So now if I refresh in here and I hit holds no importance, it's going to save as holds no importance. So there we go. So now it's actually showing that exactly as we want it to. So we save and continue, we go to another one, and we can actually change these questions as we need. All right, so that's actually saving and updating these questions and these user answers, which is very, very useful for us. We can do all sorts of things now with actually doing quizzes. We can do all kinds of quizzes with this. Do keep in mind that we are keeping it to one question depending on what we're working with. But of course, if you wanted to have multiple questions, there is a way to do it in the form that you would actually loop through all these things and kind of work with them. But basically what you would be doing is you would be adding a parameter to the name. So you would just add something to the name to have multiple name values. So like you would say, like the for loop counter, for loop.counter, and this would actually change depending on what it is in the iteration for all of the different questions. That gets a little bit complicated. So what I would suggest is you stick with one question per page at this time until you're really comfortable with how Django works. And then if you have questions on how you can actually add multiple questions on one, let us know, and we might be able to put a video together for you for that. But as far as having these questions, this actually works, and we can go through and do this a lot with all of our users and make this happen. So if you have any questions on all this stuff in general, let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.